everyone. So today I thought, let me just move my microphone a little bit. So today I thought I would read to you some quasi-inspirational quotes. So when I was in high school, and maybe my first year of college, I really liked to collect quotes, and I used to write them down. I used to write them down in little notebooks like this. So I thought I would read you some of them. Some of them might be a little bit cheesy because this was a long time ago, and some of the things that I picked out to inspire myself with might be a little cheesy, but some of them should be good. So let's go ahead and get started. Laughter is man's most distinctive emotional expression. Man shares the capacity for love, hate, anger, and fear, loyalty and grief with other living creatures, but humor, which has intellectual as well as emotional element, belongs to man. This is by Margaret Mead. Some personal views. The only guide to a man is his conscience. The only shield to his memory is the rectitude and sincerity of his actions. It is very imprudent to walk through life without his shield, because we are so often marked by the failure of our hopes and the upsetting of our calculations. But with this shield, however the fates may play, we march always in the ranks of honor. Winston Churchill. We tend not to choose the unknown, which might be a shock or a disappointment, or simply a little difficult to cope with, and yet it is the unknown with all its disappointments and surprises that is the most enriching. Anne Morrow Lindbergh, Gift from the Sea. Flip through and see if I can find some good ones. Love never reasons, but profusely gives like a thoughtless prodigal its all and trembles, then lest it is done too little. Hannah More. Life is not made up of great sacrifices or duties, but of little things, of which smiles and kindness and small obligations given habitually are what win and preserve the heart. Sir Humphrey Davy. Far better to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt. You don't become a better person because you are suffering, but you become a better person because you experienced suffering. We can't appreciate light if we haven't known darkness, nor can we appreciate warmth if we have never suffered cold. It is not what you've lost that's important. What is important is what you have left. Christian N. Bernard, M.D. I have 3 precious things which I hold fast and prize. The first is gentleness, The second is frugality. The third is humility, which keeps me from putting myself before others. Be gentle and you can be bold. Be frugal and you can be liberal. Avoid putting yourself before others and you can become a leader among men. Lao Tse. Blessed is he who has learned to admire but not envy, to follow but not imitate, to praise but not flatter, and to lead but not manipulate. William Arthur Ward. What great thing would you attempt if you knew you could not fail? Robert H. Schuller. Life isn't fair. It's just fairer than death, that's all. William Goldman from The Princess Bride. The wise man in the storm praised God not for safety from danger, but for deliverance from fear. It is the storm within which endangers him, not the storm without. Ralph Waldo Emerson. If I am willing to cheat, I could have a competitive advantage in playing golf, but it's not the same game. If we define the purpose of living only as accomplishment of a particular task, accomplishing the task becomes the moral imperative. Winning the election, getting the scoop, making a profit. But we know that nobody on a deathbed says, I wish I had spent more time at the office. People's values begin to change when they reflect upon how futile most of the flurry of activity was. And the fact of the matter is that a good conscience is the best pillow. Living a good life is the most important thing for us. Michael Josephson from Bill Moyer's A World of Ideas. More hideous crimes have been committed in the name of obedience than in the name of rebellion. C.P. Snow. It is enough if you don't freeze in the cold, and if thirst and hunger don't clog your insides, if your back isn't broken and your feet can walk, if both arms can bend, if both eyes can see, and if both ears can hear, then whom should you envy and why? Our envy devours us most of all. Rub your eyes and purify your heart, and prize above all else in the world those who love you and wish you well. After all, it might be your last act. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, The Gulag Archipelago. A good book is never exhausted. It goes on whispering to you from the wall. Books perfume and give weight to a room. A bookcase is as good as a view as the sight of a city or a river. There are dawns and sunsets in books, storms, fogs, zephyrs. I read about a family whose apartment consists of a series of spaces so strictly planned that they are obliged to give away their books as soon as they've read them. I think that they had misunderstood the way books work. Reading a book is only the first step in the relationship. After you've finished it, the book enters on its real career. It stands there as a badge, a blackmailer, a monument, a scar. It is both a flaw in the room, like a crack in the plaster, and a decoration. The contents of someone's bookcase are a part of his history, like an ancestral portrait. Anatoly Broyard. poetry of mine. I won't torture you with that. The most important things are the hardest things to say. They are the things you get ashamed of, because words diminish them. Words shrink things that seem limitless when they were in your head, to no more than living size when they're brought out. But it's more than that, isn't it? The most important things lie too close to wherever your secret heart is buried, like landmarks to a treasure your enemies would love to steal away. And you may make revelations that cost you dearly, only to have people look at you in a funny way, not understanding what you've said at all, or why you thought it was so important that you almost cried while you were saying it. That's the worst, I think, when the secret stays locked within, not for want of a teller, but for want of an understanding ear. Stephen King, The Body. If I had my life to live over, I'd try to make more mistakes next time. I would relax. I would limber up. I would be crazier than I've been on this trip. I know very few things I take seriously anymore. I would take more chances. I would take more trips. I would scale more mountains. I would swim more rivers. And I would watch more sunsets. I would eat more ice cream and fewer beans. I would have more actual troubles and fewer imaginary ones. You see, I was one of those people who lived prophylactically, insensibly, insanely, hour after hour and day after day. Oh, I've had my moments, and if I had to do it all over again, I'd have many more of them. In fact, I'd try not to have anything else, just moments, one after another, instead of living so many years ahead of my day. I've been one of those people who never went anywhere without a thermometer, a hot water bottle, a gargle, a raincoat, and a parachute, and if she had traveled with Bobby, a tape recorder, an iron, and a hairdryer. If I had to do it all over again, I'd have traveled much lighter than I have. I would start barefoot earlier in the spring, and I'd stay that way later in the fall, and I would ride more merry-go-rounds, and catch more gold rings, and greet more people, and pick more flowers, and dance more often, if I had to do it all over again. But you see, I don't. Nadine Stair. Never let anyone steal your pleasure because they behold less than you. And I don't have an author for that one. Okay, this is a quote from a book, and it's sort of starts in the middle of a scene. It's sort of odd, but I really love this passage, so I'll go ahead and read it to you. He felt as though he were starting out again for the first time, and he realized that nothing he'd done had really marked him deeply, and saw it was true for them too, that all the ugliness was on the surface, that they could all stop where they were, as he realized he was doing, and would keep doing because it was so right it was an ecstasy, and start from the beginning, the root, the center, the heart beginning of themselves. He smiled, he nearly laughed with shock and delight. Everything was within reach, everything alive like the day itself. Layla Lohengrin, he wanted to weep too, alive like earth, air, sky, everything breathing, and that was it. Just to grasp that it was all living in a magnificent, rich, endless surprise. Every moment the first moment, and he wanted to tell them too. He felt as though he'd awakened from a nightmare, how precious everything was. He was savoring each breath. He felt giddy. So simple and easy. So simple, so easy and effortless, perfect and pure, so silly to fight it. Felt free and calm, remembered riding Spavent across the golden sun-drenched fields, drifting timelessly on and on, in what seemed like one endless unstained morning. Undiluted breathing light here, too, and everything in it infinitely real and fascinating, and wished he had 1,000 hands to touch with, and eyes to drink life in with, to embrace every one and everything, to cry out that it was as simple as love and wind. And he shut his eyes, and everything stayed so vivid he gasped, and felt the inexplicable heart of earth and air and speech, and stirring of all life and thought. How could I not have known you, all of you? Wanted to kiss something, something. He knew, now he knew. He wanted to laugh. He knew where the grail was now. Everything you touched spoke, and everything touched you and revealed all secrets. This is Richard Monaco from Parsifal or A Knight's Tale. Some people think only intellect counts, knowing how to solve problems, knowing how to get by, knowing how to identify an advantage and seize it. But the many functions of intellect are insufficient without courage, love, friendship, compassion, and empathy. We care. It is our curse. It is our blessing. All things must die, but love alone eludes mortality. It overleaps the tombs and bridges the chasm of death with generation. How brief it seems in the bitterness of disillusion, and yet how perennial it is in the perspective of mankind. How in the end it saves a bit of us from decay and enshrines our life anew in the youth and vigor of a child. Our wealth is a weariness, and our wisdom is a little light that chills. But love warms the heart with unspeakable solace, even more when it is given than when it is received. Will Durant, The Pleasures of Philosophy. And by the same author from the same book. The tragedy of life is that it gives us wisdom only when it has stolen youth. What is real? Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't become ugly except to people who don't understand. But once you are real, you can't become unreal. It lasts for always. The Velveteen Rabbit. I have known laughter, therefore I may sorrow with you more tenderly. Garrison. This one I think is pretty. As a small child, I remember standing in front of my house and looking out across the yard, which spread itself before me wide and green. I remember asking myself, who am I and what is this place? Even today, I do the same thing. Childhood is a place of wonder. The edges that surround the world have not been set. All the textures are new and wonderful. As children, we do not understand how things happen. They just do. It's magic. A breeze is delicious. A tree is friendly or maybe not so. The sound of thunder can be giants or dragons. We laugh more joyously. We cry with more abandon. Then we grow up and the breeze just blows. Some trees are pretty and some not so. The sound of thunder brings rain. We gain some mastery over our world. Lose the magic, the wonder of it all. What we see with our eyes is so organized and defined. When we see something, it is always over there. But to hear is to be part of the hearing. Stories and music enter us and transport us beyond our well-defined world. Children's stories are not just for children. They're for the child who still watches the world from behind our eyes and believes all things are possible. With music, the edges can immediately soften and the world melts back into that textural realm of direct experience. The child within stretches and comes awake, and we are filled with wonder. We sense that magic is present. We are filled with images and feelings that just happen. We are children again. We always were. Mercer Mayer. I should write for the mere yearning and fondness I have for the beautiful, even if my night's labor should be burnt every morning and no eye shine upon them. John Keats. Here is an old man on the bed of death, harassed with helpless friends and wailing relatives. What a terrible sight it is, this thin frame with loosened and cracking flesh, this toothless mouth and a bloodless face, this tongue that cannot speak, these eyes that cannot see. To this pass youth has come, after all its hopes and trials. To this pass middle age, after all its torment and toil. To this pass health and strength and joyous rivalry. This arm once struck great blows and fought for victory in virile games. To this pass knowledge, science, wisdom. For 70 years this man with pain and effort gathered knowledge. His brain became the storehouse of a varied experience, the center of 1,000 subtleties of thought and deed. His heart through suffering learned gentleness, as his mind learned understanding. 70 years he grew from an animal into a man capable of seeking truth and creating beauty. But death is upon him, poisoning him, choking him, congealing his blood, gripping his heart, bursting his brain, rattling in his throat. Death wins. Outside on the green boughs, birds twitter and Chanticleer sings his hymn to the sun. Light streams across the fields, buds open and stalks confidently lift their heads. The sap mounts in the trees. Here are children. What is it that makes them so joyous? Running madly across the dew-wet grass, laughing, calling, pursuing, eluding, panting for breath, inexhaustible. What energy, what spirit and happiness. What do they care about death? They will learn and grow and struggle and create and lift life up one little notch perhaps before they die. And when they pass, they will cheat death with children, with parental care that will make their offspring finer than themselves. There in the garden's twilight lovers pass, thinking themselves unseen. Their quiet words mingle with the murmur of insects calling to their mates. The ancient hunger speaks through lowered eyes. The ancient hunger speaks through eager and through lowered eyes, and a noble madness courses through clasped hands and touching lips. Life wins. Also by Will Durant, Pleasures of Philosophy. Whoever wants music instead of noise, joy instead of pleasure, passion instead of foolery finds no home in this trivial world of ours. Hesse Steppenwolf. I want to express my being as fully as I can because somewhere I could justify my being alive that way. But if I am to express what I am, I must have a standard of life, a jumping-off place, a technique to make arbitrary and temporary organization of my own personal and pathetic little chaos. Sylvia Plath. As for the self, call it self, God, Buddha. Say that it is everywhere. Say that it is nowhere. Describe it as darkness or as light. It doesn't matter. What matters is to taste and to see. Stephen Mitchell, The Enlightened Mind. Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? T.S. Eliot. The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. Arthur Schopenhauer. The most beautiful and profound emotion we can experience is the sensation of the mystical. It is the sower of all true science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. To know what is impenetrable to us really exists, manifesting itself as the highest wisdom and the most radiant beauty which our dull faculties can comprehend only in their primitive forms. This knowledge, this feeling, is at the center of true religion. Albert Einstein. And I think we have come to the end of this book. I didn't read all of the quotes, obviously, but I read a few select ones. So I hope you enjoyed that. Not all of these were terribly inspirational, but they all were meaningful to me at the time. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye!